So episode number 1.
Yes.
Pretty fun.
Let's do it.
Yeah, dude. This is fun. So we're going to do like a season here because, I think some of this we're wanting to just provide value to real estate investors. And I think there's so many podcasts that are already out there. And when we were kind of coming up with this concept, I wanted to start episode number 1, jumping into some stuff here about your story and I guess how you do real estate a little differently. But I wanted this to become a podcast where real estate investors could get a lot of meat from it.
Yeah.
Because, you're on a couple podcasts. Like you have a podcast with Brandon Turner, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
How's that going, by the way?
It's a blast, man. Get to interview cool people all day. I love it.
What's that like spending time with Brandon?
Dude, it's he's such a good guy.
Yeah.
He's authentic. He's real. He's crushing it. He's got multiple businesses that he's crushing it in, but he's exactly who you see on social media, in real life.
I feel like awesome. That's kind of rare too. Like when you get into the space and you start to know some of these influencers and people have done big things in business. It's like, it's kind of rare to find one of those people you're the same dude everywhere you go.
Oh, dude, I love it. It was, that was because Brandon was the first person that I started listening to when I got into real estate back in like 2018, 2019, before I even bought my first house. I just would drive around listening to Bigger Pockets podcasts and learning from him and reading his books and all of the real estate stuff that you're supposed to do before you buy houses, I guess. And so when I got into real estate and started doing well, I got the opportunity to go to a mastermind that he was at. And I honestly was like, I hope I don't show up and he's a jerk, I've learned so much from him. The rug gets kind of pulled
out from underneath you.
So that was not the case though, dude. He was awesome. He's such a great guy.
That's awesome, man. It's cool. And like getting to like partner with him up on a real estate business is just super fun. Like, could you imagine ever, being
dude,
a part
it's
of something
wild,
with
isn't
him?
it? Yeah. It's wild that for what 2020 was when, but yeah, so like 4 years ago, we were buying our first rental properties, had no idea what we were doing. And 4 years later, we're getting to partner with him on stuff. So
it's awesome.
Yeah.
Like with starting Deal Flow Real Estate together and, we got a few partners, Brandon, my brother. And I was kind of just thinking like on the subject of what we're just talking about, Brandon, his character. I was telling Sammy, I found myself talking about you this weekend. And I was like, Cameron's such a good guy. Like we have all these conversations about marketing and obviously trying to get the word out there about the business. And it's fun because every time we like talk about something that's like numbers or, how many deals you've done or how many deals you have in the pipeline, it's almost like every time we have a conversation, you're really wanting to make sure we don't embellish the truth at all. Yeah. And it's almost every conversation there's this character quality I've seen in you where you really have to be integrous. And I just found myself really appreciating that this weekend, talking to my wife about that. I was like, man, Cameron's really a good guy. And I feel safe having him as a partner with the conversations we've had. So I think that's really cool about you too.
Thank you. That means a lot. Yeah. That means a lot. It really does.
Totally, dude. Well, I guess like before jumping into, cause I really wanted to like maybe talk more about how you're doing so much volume like today in this conversation. Cause I have a lot of real estate investor friends and I've been more in like the entrepreneurship space, building, education type businesses. My wife and I were life coaches, faith-based life coaches, and really built a business off of that. That's one of our passions is seeing people get like healed and whole. And like, so when we jumped in together, it was kind of like opening my eyes to this whole world that I wasn't a part of. But like, I started realizing quickly that you're doing a lot more deals than most of my friends I've ever talked to that are in real estate. And like that's rare. And I guess before jumping into like all of that, why and how did you get into real estate and just start, going for it?
Well, first, let me say something about the deals. Okay. A lot of your friends are probably doing large multifamilies or things like that. So I'm a single family guy. So like I get to do more deals because they're single family. The average deal that we buy is, a $200,000 to $300,000 house.
Okay.
So it is easier for me to buy houses. Than, if I was doing 100 large multifamilies a year, that'd be wild. That'd be amazing. But, that'd also be billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Tens of millions. So,
well, I mean, there's like, and this is kind of, business 101 is there's like a couple ways to really increase your revenue in a business. That's either doing more transactions or increasing transaction size, or it's getting the same person to do more transactions with you. But I guess in real estate, it's kind of like, okay, do I want to do high volume with a lower price point, or do I want to do low volume but big price points that have big profits? It sounds like you went the volume game.
Yeah, the volume game, and the profits are still great in that. Actually, most of the people that I know that are in like the multifamily space, the commercial space, or even higher end homes, they aren't turning the type of profit that we're turning. But what I would say is, with where we're at, it is time intensive and there's a lot of manpower needed for it. And so for us to scale from, let's say, 100 homes a year to 1,000 homes a year, that's way harder to do in the space that I'm in. Because there's definitely some inefficiencies in our business that we could figure out, like, hey, how do we, do, let's say, twice the amount with the same amount of people that we have. But even that would be tough. But to get to 3x, 4x, 5x, 10x, we can't do that with the same amount of people that we have. We have to scale our acquisition managers, our lead managers, our marketing, our contractors. That would be huge. We'd have to scale that. We'd have to scale our project manager, our maintenance techs. We had to scale all of that. And, to get to, let's say, 1,000 homes a year, we'd probably have to at least 5 to 7x all of that.
Jeez.
Yeah, maybe more.
What do you feel like would be the last thing you'd want to work on scaling, like out of those things you just mentioned? I feel like acquisition managers, you'd probably be able to get that like pretty easy. Get a few of those guys.
Yeah. I would probably contractors.
Because you mean you don't like doing the flips yourself?
Yeah. So I would say contractors. Acquisition managers would be tough too, though, man. That's a tough role where you're out, you're driving around, you're looking at properties, you're putting in offers. And it's one of those things where, like, only 1 out of every 10 to 13, 14 offers gets accepted. So you have to go through a lot of failure, driving around a lot. And it's one of those things where it's not 1 out of every 10 offers you're getting a deal. That's the average, but you might put in 30 offers and not buy a house for 2 or 3 weeks. And then 1 week you buy 4 houses, but it's just a stressful job.
Sure.
So that would be hard to scale for sure.
Well, I guess before scaling that too, you kind of have to pay your dues, because I guess like training an acquisition manager, you'd have to know how to create that kind of volume yourself before you even like onboard somebody like that. Yeah. I guess like, do you feel like that was your specialty when you jumped in? Like, okay, I'm going to get into the real estate investing game. Do you feel like creating lots of deal flow, was that, what made you good, or like, I guess why?
Yeah, for sure.
To be successful so fast?
That is exactly what it was. Well, two things. Which do you want to go back and start my story? Do you want to
actually? Yeah, I'd love to hear your story a little bit more, because I think I
think we jumped.
Yeah, I know. I just that's like, my fault. Well, mine too. I'm just like, okay, wait, tell me about this. I want to get granular so fast, and I hate listening to episodes of podcasts and watching content. We talked about this, where it's just like so much fluff.
Yeah. And
there's no granular like how to. And I really, like, you and I both want to build something that's more like, okay, is there a lot of value packed in here? So we're getting into it, but maybe you can start with like, okay, the story, what led you there? Because there's a motivation concept here.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't ever want to come across as the person that's like, oh, you've got a cool story and that's it,
Sure.
Because I think that's important, where it is, it's fun that we've been able to scale the way we have, but like, okay, how did you do it? Like, let's get into the granular details of doing that. But quick and short, I was broke and got into real estate, and now I'm
rags to riches. So it's a true rags to riches story. That's great, man. Thank you for sharing. Let's move on.
Yeah. So now we can get into the granular. We can get into the fun stuff. So.
Well, you were a pastor, right?
I was. Yeah. Absolutely loved that role and that job. I was at a church, and just loved it, but didn't make very much money.
Right.
And they took care of us well, but at the same time I was living in a really expensive market, and we had a daughter at the time, and we were paycheck to paycheck.
Sure.
And I didn't come from money. It wasn't like, I had a bunch of money in savings or anything like that. And so living paycheck to paycheck, which is great. Actually, there is a lot of stress involved with that, but there's also not a lot. Like, yeah. Where it's like, hey, this is all we can spend. We can't spend any more money. When we're out of money.
Yeah, there's no like pressure of like, gosh, we got to make more. Got to hit. It's like, no, this is the number.
Yes, when we're out, we're out. So yeah, I was living paycheck to paycheck, and I started doing like some fun things. Like I Ubered, only Ubered for a couple weeks and ended up hating it. And then
how many people threw up in your car?
Nobody. Oh, nobody. But I also had a daughter at the time, and I was like, I'm not willing to go out and drive, on Friday night from 10 till 2 in the morning. That was just not, I wasn't willing to do that. And so, got into, watching Gary V. He has all these videos of like going to garage sales and flipping stuff at garage sales. Yeah. And so I actually started flipping on Craigslist free, where I'd get stuff, because Craigslist, they have like a free page. Yeah. And I would go get things for free off of Craigslist free, and then I would relist them. And dude, like, it was such a win to me. If I could make $30 on something, I'd be like, this is amazing. If you added up your time, where it was like, you took, 30 minutes to go drive and get it, 30 minutes to come back, 30 minutes to list it, the communication with the person buying it, like, oh, you made, $6 an hour. But for me, it was like such a win to be able to make $30-$40 on something by flipping it on Craigslist free.
That's
which
smart.
Yeah, it's free. So why not?
Increased your pastor paycheck by like 10 or 20%.
Yeah. And if you can get into that, the other thing, I got paid for doing funerals and weddings, so would sign up for those. Yeah.
Like you would facilitate or officiate them?
Yeah.
Wow.
So that made a little, I was just doing things to make extra money.
How was that experience for you? Is that like just okay?
Yeah, it was a blast. Okay. I mean, well, the weddings were nice.
Weddings were nice. I guess I'm thinking like funerals. Not so much. Like, geez.
Yeah, I actually, I'm not going to tell this story on a podcast, but I have a crazy story about a funeral.
Gosh, you're gonna put everybody on the edge of their seat.
I can't share it. I don't want to.
Oh my gosh. Well, maybe I can hear about it. And
I'll tell you.
You guys listening to this, screw you. You don't get to hear this story. You're not that cool.
I will tell you. There's some of this information sensitive, and whoever it was with, I'm sure is not watching this, but in case. Yeah. I mean, I'm so popular, man. This podcast has so many views and downloads. But I'm sure that they're not, but still sensitive information. But anyway, I was doing those to bring in a little bit of extra income. But I always knew like I wanted to make more money. As we had kids, as we had a family, I knew that like I couldn't live paycheck to paycheck. I wanted to travel with our kids. I wanted to just provide them not even like a overly, fancy or extravagant lifestyle, but just a lifestyle to where they could play on the sports teams that they wanted to. We could travel together. We didn't have to like every time we went to at King Soopers, which is a store in Denver, or Safeway to get food, having to like look at our bank account to see how much money we had. I didn't love that. I don't think anybody really loves that. And so I always knew that like, hey, I wanted to make more money. But honestly, I never had that moment where it was like I had to make more money. And so that actually happened for me though. When my daughter was about a year old, maybe a little bit less than a year, but she reacted really bad to
She peanuts. Was a year.
Yeah.
Dude, that's scary.
Yeah, it was.
They're so like vulnerable at age too.
Yeah. Well, for me, it wasn't. For me, it was actually such a, I freak out a lot as a dad.
Yeah.
And so I was in a meeting, and I had my phone on silent. So Riley, she ate peanut butter and she blew up to like twice her size, went into anaphylactic shock. Lexi rushed her to the hospital, a bunch of crazy stuff. But I was in a meeting, and all of it happened like that. And I had my phone turned off. And so after the meeting, I had like 30 missed calls. I had all of these like not crazy texts, but like
your wife
Cameron, something's happened.
Yeah.
But fortunately, by the time I got out of the meeting, Lexi had already gotten to the hospital. They'd already EpiPenned her. They'd already hooked her up to IVs. And the last text was like, everything's fine.
Oh
Riley's
my
fine. So I didn't have
gosh.
to go through like the hour of turmoil of like, what's happening? Is she going to be all right?
You had like
She's not
20 seconds of
breathing.
turmoil between
Yes,
the first and
yes.
the last text.
That's exactly it. Yeah. And Lexi showed me pictures because she took some pictures of her as she was like swelling up and struggling to breathe. But I didn't have to deal with any of that, thankfully,
Dude, your
because I
wife's
would
a
have freaked out.
superhero.
Yeah, I would have freaked out.
You must have given your wife like 10 years of back massages after that situation. Jeez, that's crazy.
So-
okay. So, but at least the reality though of that set in because you took her to the hospital and like what happened after
Yeah,
that?
so we took her to the hospital, or she had to stay there for a night or so.
So insurance covered
fine.
this though?
Yeah, insurance did not cover it. That was the problem.
okay.
Insurance did not
Yeah.
cover it because we took her to an out of network insurance or not out of that network hospital, which is really poor how insurance does that. And again, the politics behind that, but
it's so annoying.
So insurance didn't cover it. We got hit with a hospital bill. It was like $15,000 that we couldn't pay. So really what happened was we took her to like one of those 24-hour urgent cares.
Sure.
And our hospital or our insurance covered emergency room visits, but not the urgent care visit.
Weird.
Yeah. So, and I mean, when Lexi was rushing her to the hospital,
You're not thinking about,
she's like, I just need to get to the closest place
Yeah.
where they can take care of my daughter. So,
Yep.
So that was kind of what happened. And,
so like at what point did that set in though, where you're like, I can't pay this?
the night that we got the bill,
Okay.
cause I didn't really know what was happening. Honestly, I'm not the most like organized guy when it comes to stuff like that. And so like, it was just like, whatever. We took her to the hospital, brought her home. Everything was fine. A couple weeks later, we're sitting there. We get this bill in the mail from the urgent care or whatever. And I remember sitting there being like, there is no possible way that we can pay this because we're paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah. I'm
not making very much more money. I think I'm at like $40,000 to $45,000 a year. And it wasn't one of those like $15,000 could have been, $500,000, $1 million at that point where it's like, there's nothing that I did not have the skills to go out and make an extra $15,000.
Yeah.
With the amount of work that I already had with, being a father, we had our second one on the way. Like I didn't have the mindset or the skills to be able to go out and make extra money.
And you weren't getting invited to like the Kardashian weddings to officiate.
No. I think I got
that
paid.
would have been a great paycheck.
Yeah. I think I got paid like $300 a wedding.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Which after
Yeah.
like the rehearsal, the full day at the wedding, like that only equated to like $20, $25
That's
an hour.
so bad. Well, like how did you get into real estate then? You like looked at this, you were flipping stuff.
Yeah. No, so I honestly just Googled like, how do I make more money? Legitimately.
Wow.
And, real estate was one of the ways that popped up and I had zero real estate experience whatsoever.
Sure.
But real estate popped up and I remember either like reading a quote or hearing a quote before then of, 90% of self-made millionaires do it through real estate. I don't know if that's completely true, but I think that it is. Like, I think that real estate is the easiest way that the average person can make millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Cause I'm very average. I'm, seriously, I'm not that smart. I'm not organized. I'm very average. And so I would probably agree with that quote, to be completely honest with you. But so I decided to dive into learning about real estate. This was the end of 2018. And so, downloaded, all of the Bigger Pockets podcasts. That was kind of where I started, was like, I'm just going to listen to every single one of these. I ordered some books. I started reading books on real estate, and just started like learning as much as I could, but, not having a mentor or anything only gets you so far.
Sure.
But then my wife and I, we made the decision, in 2019 where it was kind of like, hey, we have to do something else. This is just not the lifestyle that we want to live for our family. And after that, that bill, it was one of those things where like, not only like, can we not pay this bill, but we also couldn't pay our mortgage. I couldn't pay my student loan payments. I couldn't pay my car payments because of that. And so everything just kind of went haywire there. And we were putting stuff on credit cards and just knew like, in the here and now, like the 2019 here and now, like this is, we can't continue to do this, but also like looking towards the future.
Yeah.
When I look at like, hey, future me doesn't want to be worried about not being able to pay my house payment or my car payment or, you know, my student loan payments or anything like that. And so, I just knew that I had to change something. And so
it's almost like having a situation like that kind of makes you aware of something you were in denial to in the first place. I think a lot of people, they think that it's okay moving paycheck to paycheck. And we kind of live in this little bubble of denial that we're okay. Like if anything, but we aren't aware of all those future things. Like what if you could invest into your kid's college tuition and it's not a thought?
Yeah.
What if you could you're not thinking about all the possibilities because you won't it's like we don't let ourselves think about all of what that currency could do for our lives and change things.
Yeah, no, I agree. The denial for sure. I think another thing too is that, I mean, this is in every area of our life, but you look at future you. And like, if you were to close your eyes right now and envision, you know, Spencer in 10 years, I bet he is wealthier than you are right now. You're probably in better shape. You're probably nicer. You're probably,
I'm in better shape.
Yeah.
God.
So
43 years old.
Yeah. So, but you're going to envision the best version of yourself, you know? Yeah. And I obviously would do that too. But my life that I was living was not in alignment with who I was in 10 years.
Yeah.
And I think that so often, even then I thought, well, something's going to happen or eventually I'm going to like change career paths or figure out something else to make more money. And I think a lot of people think that, where it's like, hey, I'm going to work really, really hard right now. I'm going to be really stressed out right now because at some point I'm going to flip a switch and it's going to change. And the reality is nothing changes if nothing changes.
Yeah.
And so, I was actually like not pumped that my daughter, you know, went into anaphylactic shock and can't eat peanuts, but it was a blessing because that was the flip switch of me changing.
It woke you up.
Yes.
Almost,
I don't know, if I would have changed if that hadn't have happened.
Well, it's like people in rock bottoms, you know, like you have to hit a rock bottom of sorts to really change. And Tony Robbins talks about how like our desire for change comes from two big places. It's either enough of a desire for a future result or enough of a reaction to the pain of your past. You know, it's that you had a really painful thing, but then it also led you into future vision and forecasting. And I feel like people have to, in their maturity, get to a place where they're like, what do I want in my life? And then is that desire enough for me to make sacrifices now for that future? You know, because it's that delayed gratification that really makes for success. It's like, can I experience a pain of lack now, or a pain of cost, or a pain of effort, or a pain of money, like loss of money or investing money for a future return that's going to pay way larger dividends? And most people would rather have the now present experience of gratification versus, you know, what that investment's going to make longer, you know, in the long term.
Yeah, for sure. No, I love that. The delayed gratification is such a huge part of real estate, any investing, honestly.
Sure.
And also like one of my favorite quotes, I don't know who said this, or if I made it up, but, it's, long-term consistency is always better than short-term intensity. And that's one of those, like when you look at yourself in 10 years, I always thought like, you know, for instance, let's say your marriage, like, you've had, I'm not saying you, but just the average person, you've had 10 years of a really terrible marriage and you want to make your marriage better. And people think that can be done overnight. Like all of the 10 years of trauma, the 10 years of the broken trust, like, hey, I'm going to be really nice to my wife for the next 2 weeks. I'm going to buy her flowers. And I'm going to tell her that I love her and I'm going to speak life into her. And they think that 2 weeks of short-term intensity can basically, you know, rewire the 10 years of pain and trauma. And that's not the case. That's going to take 10 more years of long-term consistency of doing those things for the next 10 years to basically break the trauma and the bonds of the 10 years of not having that, you know? And
totally.
So I say that because it's the same thing with like life, at least for me, when I was looking at like my 10-year version of myself, it thought like, oh, in 5, 6, 7 years, I can flip the switch and it's going to be that like short-term intensity that's going to be able to make up for the last 7 years of not working towards a financial goal, or not working towards a investment goal, or not working towards my mindset or my education revolved around this space. And I think that's how I would have been. And then in 7 years, I would have tried to flip that switch and I would have realized, oh, I'm still 10 years out. So that's going back to everything happening with my daughter. It was a blessing in disguise because it forced me to flip the switch way earlier than I think I would have. And now I realize like I'm set up honestly right now for life, but I can only imagine, because I'm 32, when I'm 42, like what that looks like, or when I'm 52,
if you continue this trajectory, 100%. Well, like, when I kind of look at these, situations like this, we're talking about like skill development, things like that. I think it's like when you flip the switch too, you're kind of like, okay, I need to develop new skills. But also when you flip that switch, you start thinking outside of the box you've been living in. So it's like your paradigms also can change. Besides just like doing more or learning new skills. Like you were a pastor, you're probably phenomenal at the skills of networking, relationships, speaking and communicating. So you take those skills and you go, what's another vehicle to put those skills in that I've already learned that are going to pay me dividends? And I feel like what a lot of people limit themselves to is what the academic and, normal workforce systems have told us our skills fit in. So they go, here are the boxes that they fit in. And we don't go, what's a new box? What's a box I can create to put these skills in that have a higher leverage in the marketplace? If I'm good at communicating, I could do weddings, or I could also speak on a podcast, or I can, be somebody that speaks on stages. I can become a motivational speaker. I can start a YouTube and leverage that and build an audience. I can, it's like that skill can be used in so many other formats. And I feel like what you have to, like one of the things I learned from a mentor years ago, and this was somebody that was, my business was doing like 500 grand a month, which was not small at the time. And I was like really looking for direction from this guy. And it was very interesting. He was like, I think you've probably reached the cap. I think your business will probably cap at $1 million a month, which a lot of us will be like, that's amazing. I think for me, that felt sad. I'm like, wait, our business will cap at $1 billion a month. What am I going to do then? And he said, I think you have the right skills, but you're in the wrong boat. I think you need to start getting in a different boat. And it didn't even make sense to me. He's like, I think you should start looking at potentially getting rid of this business and starting a new one. And like to the normal person, getting rid of like a 500 grand a month business sounds ridiculously stupid. But he hit on something that really changed my mindset about stuff. He's like, you have skills to build something way bigger, but you're applying them to the model you think you're limited to. And he's like, why don't you choose a new model? Same skills. He's like, what if you had a price point that was 5x what you're currently selling to a different type of person? You built a business around that. And it was like, I didn't think about that. It's like now you have a $5 million a month opportunity just by 5xing the price, not even adding anything else to the business or any other opportunities or money vehicles. It's not just all about money, but it is like that is something that is, I think money as a currency really helps us catch a grasp of like investing, returns, and it's like a perfect vehicle for understanding how all these things work. You know what I mean? Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. And I mean, when you learn to leverage your skills and get outside of kind of your paradigm shifts, like you said, and you can remove yourself from the situation that you're in, you can realize like these skills facilitated in a different vehicle or employed through a different vehicle, you can make a lot more money in. So even like with real estate, for instance, I am a single family investor, and I have a lot of guys, Brandon being one of them, saying it takes me the same amount of work to buy a 200,000 single family house as it does a $2 million multifamily house. And so but I'm kind of stuck in that paradigm of single family, houses. Sure. And so, and I think I will. The reason I haven't done that yet is not because I'm scared of it or don't know how to do it. It's just because I want to be the best that I can be in the single family space before I move on. But leveraging your skills in different ways. And like you said, realizing that, hey, I could have a different thing that we are 5x the price on or something like that. Like you have the right skills, you're in the wrong vehicle, So,
and what you just hit on is like, it's not all mindset. It is also skill development. So like what you're saying is like, before I move on to bigger projects, I want to make sure my skills are like fully ready. By the time I make that paradigm shift of like, okay, let's move into a new vehicle. I want to make sure my skills are up to par with that new vehicle as well.
Yeah. And I think like real estate specifically, like in some areas, you don't need startup capital. You don't need like, you're just doing something different and rethinking the way that things work. So for instance, I have a buddy who is really great at tech, and he basically brings on clients, for one-on-one stuff, and he charges them, a consulting fee. And so we actually this was actually about a year and a half ago, we talked and was just chatting with him and gave him like advice of like, imagine that if you could charge that, but you could bring on 10 clients at once and teach them all at once. And so then you could do 10 times the amount of revenue that you're doing. And so he was able to do that, where when he brings on a client, he brings on 10 at once to go through it's really a program to go through that program versus doing it with one person, and 10 people isn't overpowering the other people or anything like that. And so,
and they're all asking like the same questions.
Exactly. And they get to learn from each other. And so, but I say that to say like, that is, he's not having to, he might have to do a little bit more marketing or to find those clients, but he is not investing more capital in it. And real estate is a little bit different because if you're going to be doing, let's say 10, 20, 30, $40 million buildings, you're having to bring on outside partners. And what I see a lot of people do,
but you have a lot less control over.
You have a lot less control over, but a lot of times it's capital partners. And so you still have a lot of the control. The capital partners just bring the money. And I've seen so many people in the last couple of years that are, large multifamily syndications or funds. They were sexy and they had no idea what they were doing, but they started a syndication or they started a fund, and they're losing really great people's money, potentially because of that. And so they didn't.
Right now they are.
Yeah. Because
Bummer.
they didn't take the time to put in the work to develop their skill set. They went from A to Z without hitting any of the letters in between.
You're like, you didn't play Pop Warner. You didn't go to college for football. You just jumped straight into like the NFL thinking you could throw some touchdown passes.
Yeah. And I just never, reputation is such a huge thing. And not only in real estate, but just in life in general. And I never want to risk my reputation for a little bit of money or for a little bit of, honestly, ego is what a lot of it, where it's like, to me, it's not as cool saying that, I'm a single family investor like that.
It's not sexy.
It's not sexy. Yeah. It's not as sexy as like, hey, I'm a private equity guy or,
Sure.
So
I know. It's the ego stuff.
And that's just an ego thing where it is. And then also on top of it, because I fund all of the deals myself and because, I don't have any partners, I do probably make more, I would
than some of these guys,
than most. You have to have a lot. So like, let's think about it this way. Most syndications, let's say you're taking down $100 million building, which is awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
You're probably going to do like a 70-30 equity split, which means that the LPs are going to get 70%. The GPs are going to own 30% of that. And so immediately you're only going to own 30% of the equity in that. So let's say, you're going to own 30% of the equity in that. And then you have partners on the GP side and you're, that 30%, maybe you're only a 30% owner of the GP. And so then all of a sudden you own 30% of 30% of the equity. Yeah. Or less than that, honestly, because you own 9% of the equity.
Interesting.
So like thinking through some of those things where it's like, or for us, we own, coming close to $16 million of real estate that we own 100% of. And then we, all of the equity in those properties, which is sitting around like $7 million, is ours. So when we sell those, if we ever choose to sell them, that money will come to us, or we'll take that and we'll 1031 it into a bigger building, something like that. So I don't think we'll ever sell them. Just they're so easy and they're great. And
interest rates are probably good on those too.
But yeah, they are. We locked in on a 10-year fixed, 30-year AM on most of them at 4% back in the beginning of 2022. We have some on higher interest notes, but so all that to say.
So it's interesting because I'm like, as we're, coming up like on a pretty good chunk of this podcast, we could spend a whole other podcast and probably should on just creating deal flow.
Yeah. Yeah. We've kind of been all over the place.
I know. I kind of like it though, because at the same time, I think with this season of podcast episodes we're trying to do for deal flow, I want to create context too, because I hear so many people that don't even have the right vehicle of investing. Mm-hmm. It sounds like a lot of people are, as I'm learning more about the space, people are still trying to make long-term rentals work with like current interest rates. Mm-hmm. And there are still people trying to hold on to these things they learned from a book or from a course or from something like maybe 2, 3, 5 years ago that just aren't working in the current market. And it's like there's such a tight grip on not changing that it's hard to see like, well, what's actually the best thing to do for the average Joe in real estate investing. And it sounds like it's not even necessarily long-term investing right now.
Yeah. So I 100% believe in long-term investing and long-term investing in rental properties and real estate. But I think that there's levels to everything. And so for most people, what I would say is the very first level of real estate investing is learning how to flip properties and how to wholesale properties. That's going to bring you in a crazy amount of active income. If you are, it should bring you in, I would say your first year. I promise anybody, if you're 100% dedicated to this and you're all in and you're looking for properties, you're finding good contractors, you're putting in the effort, you can make, $500,000 a year flipping and wholesaling. Like
your first year. What'd you do your first year?
Yeah, we did that at least. We for sure did that. I mean, I was all in. I was all in. Quit my W-2 job.
How did you decide that?
I got super fortunate. So going back to my story, we moved back to St. Louis. That was kind of, we decided, hey, at the time we thought Denver was too expensive. Looking back now, that was just I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I thought that it would be easier to buy in St. Louis than it was in Denver. I think that we 100% could have done it in Denver now that I know what I know. But we moved back to St. Louis. Part of it too was my family was back in St. Louis. We were going to live in Lexi's parents' house. And we did do that. We lived there for free, and I was going to get into real estate. And so that was what we did. And I actually took a job at a church back in St. Louis. Great church, loved it, was a teaching pastor there. And it actually lined up perfectly for us where COVID hit, which terrible thing that devastated a lot of people. For me, that meant that the church that I was at, we shut our doors for a while. We were doing online stuff, wasn't meeting with people anymore. And so I had all day, every day to kind of experiment with real estate and learn more about real estate and find deals. And so for pretty much all of March, April, and May, I was 100% in on real estate. And that was my full-time job. That wasn't my full-time job. And then when the church opened back up their doors in June, I resigned. So, it wasn't always the plan, but,
you had to take care of your family at that point.
Yeah. So ended up going all in on real estate but I think anybody can do it. Cause it's not that hard. Single family investing. There are a lot of strategies that you need to learn. There's a lot of strategies and skills that you need to develop, but it's also not
it's not rocket science.
It's not rocket science at all. And one of the things that I like to say is it's simple. It's not easy. It's very, very simple. Like you can learn how to comp a property. You can learn how to analyze a rehab budget. You can learn how to negotiate with the seller. You can learn how to manage a flipping team. Like all of those things are pretty simple. Now they take a lot of work and they take a lot of reps to hone in on those skills and get better and better at them. But it's simple, not easy.
So the average Joe doesn't have like 8 hours a day like you did as a pastor during that season.
Yeah.
Like, you know, how many hours a week is the average Joe that's working a 40, 50 hour week? What do they need?
Yeah.
Like,
If you can put in 5 hours a week,
just 5.
Yeah. 5 hours a week, I think. Cause 5 hours a week, that's going to, let's say that those are focused, diligent hours. So those aren't hours that is learning more about real estate. Those aren't hours. Those are actually focused, diligent hours of actually going out and doing versus learning. So
like caffeine, Zen.
Caffeine and Zen, baby. It's going to make me live to 150 years old for sure. Yeah.
So focused work.
Focused work. And so like, let's say that just with 5 hours a week, 100% you could do 5 properties a year. Which is not very many.
What's an average spread with like?
Well, that's what I'm saying is let's say that you make $40,000 in net profit on every one of those deals. So that's after holding costs. That's after obviously paying for the rehab. That's after paying realtor fees, closing costs, all that stuff.
So 200 G's after all that.
Yeah, that's $200,000. And you could, on 5 hours of work a week, you could do that.
So could you double that and go, well, I'm going to go 10 hours of focused work, do that in 6 months, quit my job, and then do triple that.
Yeah.
The following 6 months.
Everybody should do that. I'm such a firm believer for
like shorten the tunnel.
Yeah. For the average person, real estate investing is going to be the quickest way to a large amount of active income. Unless you are an exec at a tech company or, high-end sales or something like that, real estate's going to be your way to, I wouldn't even call it financial freedom because it's active income, but it's going to be your way of working yourself out of a job, buying back your time to be focused on a industry that will allow you to build passive income and get financial freedom. So like the framework that I would lay out for anybody that's like, hey, how do I get to, let's say, $10,000 a month in passive income? The reality is it's a lie that you can do that investing on the side. It's a lie that you can just buy, because unless you have a really, really great paying W-2 job, and I'm talking $500,000 plus a year, and you're able to live off of a couple $100,000 and be able to invest the other $300,000.
But then now you're having to, if you want to replace your income, now you have to have $50,000.
Yeah, exactly.
Or $40,000 a month.
So it's just that's a lie. I don't think that that's true, at least right now.
I feel like even the word passive
is
kind of a lie. Unless you have capital existing in an account, you can't really create passive income.
Yeah.
It's active, the creation of it.
Yeah.
And then it's active somewhat, the maintenance of it.
Yeah. The passive income, really, like the true passive income, would only come from investing into a fund or syndication.
Yeah.
Because then that's where like the LPs, they will invest their money. The GPs will manage it all. LPs don't have to do anything. The GPs are the operators. But then that you'd have to have, let's say that your returns on that are 12%. You'd have to invest, $1.2 million to be able to return $10,000 a month. And to create that $1.2 million is a lot of hard work and takes the average person years to accumulate, if ever. And so
how do you do this model you're talking about without being a contractor, having that knowledge of flipping and all that stuff?
Yeah. All that's learned. Like all of that is something that you can just learn over time. Or not even over time. You can learn that really quick. But the key is so like that the first thing that I would tell anybody that's like, hey, I want to get into real estate, I want to build up $10,000 passive income, is start flipping and wholesaling properties. And the reason that I would say that is, one, because that's going to get you out of your W-2 job, and now you can focus on that. And then over time, you can start incorporating more rentals, and you can make a lot of income and invest that into syndications or funds if you want to. But start flipping and wholesaling properties. And with that the way that you get good at that is you get great at finding deals. If you can find deals deep enough, there's going to be buyers out there that you can wholesale it or wholetail it, which is essentially closing on it, relisting it without doing much work to it. But you can do that with just finding good deals, or flipping a property. If you find a great deal, like the rehab budget, I mean, it matters, and learning how to analyze a rehab budget and put that together matters, but you are paying somebody to do that. If you buy it deep enough, you've got like we just bought a house that we bought for $190,000. We're putting $110,000 into it. I had that budgeted and borrowed that from a private money lender.
Yeah.
Borrowed $110,000 for the rehab, $190,000 for the purchase price. We're going to be all in for $300,000. We're probably going to sell that for $450,000. So,
jeez.
Yeah, we'll make, after holding costs, like the interest on the private money, realtor fees, closing costs, we'll walk with about $100,000 on that. And
I feel like a contractor, it's not that difficult. Like we brought in a contractor to rehab our house, the house we live in.
Yeah, so you're just doing that for other houses. Yeah,
you kind of give them guidelines, tell them what to do, and here's the vision for it. Here's the budget. We need to keep it under this. I feel like that's not a difficult thing to learn if you just decide I'm going to do this for a deal. If you have the right calculations, obviously. Yeah. But like with our home, I wasn't planning on doing anything investing wise with this, but we bought it for 1.5. We put like $300,000 into the renovations. Now it's worth like almost 3 or a little more over 3.
Yeah.
And it's like, I didn't plan that. It just worked out, but if you were to intentionally do that in a market where that there is an after rehab value that's really high. Yeah. Then you could do that systematically over and over again without having to swing the hammer.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think anybody should swing their hammer. That
limits the deals you can do.
It does. Yeah. And if you're the person that's just like, hey, I want to get out of my W-2 job as quick as possible, and I only can commit, 4 or 5 hours a week to it, you're not going to be able to get out of your job as quick as possible, because that 4 to 5 hours a week is going to be spent swinging your own hammer at those properties. And so you can hire that out. That's not a hard thing to do. That's finding contractors is over time just becomes pretty easy.
That makes sense. That's interesting. So one last question, because I know we're like coming up towards the end of our time for the episode, and we have a bunch more. And so I think the next one we should really go into deal flow, because I really want to hear more about that process for like laid out step by step. But and like give some granular stuff. But I think it's nice creating some context first. We're like, okay, here's I think where we're going to get into some nitty gritty stuff. But like wholesaling, I've heard some like pros and cons, and like some evil people that kind of do that stuff. And like I've even seen some different content, like, is this even legal? And I'm like, Jesus. So when
it probably shouldn't be legal. It's full disclosure.
Yeah, sure. But like, how do you, I guess, teach people how to do that in an ethical way? And that's different than, I guess, how somebody might normally do it.
Yeah. So
maybe share what it is first.
Yeah.
Because I'm still a little fuzzy.
Yeah. Wholesaling would be, I come to, Spencer, your house, and I see that it's probably worth $500,000, and it needs $100,000 in rehab. My offer on that would typically be around $300,000 for an offer price. Like if I was going to buy it, I'd buy it for $300,000. I'd put $100,000 into it. I'd sell for $500,000. Those are just quick, rough numbers. But if maybe I didn't want to wholesale it, or I didn't want to flip it, I didn't have the capital to flip it, or I didn't want to put in the work and managing the rehab on that, I would make you an offer for $280,000. And then I would go try and find a buyer that would buy it from me at around $300,000. So I would make a quick $20,000 with really just being the middleman, just being kind of the middleman. I connect the buyer with the seller.
Do you go like 20% of the profit margin typically of like what you think a flipper might make?
No. It's typically like our average wholesale deal is probably probably $15,000. We don't wholesale a lot. We try and flip everything, or whole tail, which takes it down, and then we do a clean out and like a really make ready rehab, or don't touch it and just relist it. But like $15,000 is probably a good wholesale fee. But like if you can make a $7,000 spread and you do that 100 times, that's $700,000. So
yeah, that's fair.
So there's no like right or wrong with the fee.
So but people can get in there and say like, oh, I have this under contract, and then try and get someone to buy that. Nobody does. Then all of a sudden it falls through, and the person that you were going to buy the home from gets screwed in the process.
Yeah. That's why
people do that kind of all the time.
That's why I truly do hate wholesaling. Like I think that people should utilize it, but they should do it the right way. And so
like treat it as if you actually bought the home.
Yeah. So every house that I put under contract, I am buying no matter what. If I can't find a buyer for it, I'm going to close on it. And I'm very open with the seller when it comes to that, of like, if I were on that house, like, hey, I'm going to offer you $280,000 for it. No matter what, I'm going to buy this house. I'm going to, bring in some investors and see if they want it. And if they don't, I'm still buying it at $280,000. You can take it to the bank. Because what I see happen all of the time, especially in the St. Louis market, there's a lot of wholesalers there.
Sure.
And I'm sure it's every market throughout the United States, but they actually do the exact opposite, where I'm coming up with what would I pay for this as an investor? And then I'm going to go lower than that because I want to work in the spread so I can sell it to an investor.
Yeah.
But what they'll do is they'll offer higher than what a typical investor would pay, just to get the owner to say yes. There's people out there that are teaching, like, just offer them whatever they want, and then try and sell it. And if you can't sell it, then cut loose the contract. And I just think that's such a shady, really scammy way to do business, because a quick story to illustrate my point on this was, I was working with this wonderful lady, and she was elderly. She was probably in her 80s. And she was so nice. She was so kind. And I offered her, I think, $250,000 on the house. It was down in the city in an area that's up and coming, really great area. We were going to rehab it. I offered $250,000. She got a call from an out-of-state wholesaler who never even walked the property. And I tried to tell her all of these, like, he hasn't walked it or anything, like, he's not going to close on it, but he offered her $290,000. So it was $40,000 more than where I was at. And she was dead set on taking that $290,000 offer, which I get it. If you don't understand real estate and the game, I would do that too, where it's like, no, this person's offering me $40,000 more. Why would I not take that? And I tried to explain to her, like, hey, it's not a for sure thing. Like, with me, it's a for sure thing. I've got the cash. I can close quick.
And she's thinking you're an investor that's just trying to sell her on you buying it for less.
And so she went with the $290,000 offer. And quick backstory on this lady. She was moving into like a 55 plus community, and she was buying a house in one kind of out in the suburbs because she was in the city, and she needed this money to sell this house to close on the next one. And so anyway, she goes with him, and the day of closing, she calls me bawling her eyes out because he had put in a contingency period all the way up until the day of closing. And he tried to shop that property, and I saw him shopping it. Because I'm on all the Facebook investing pages, I saw him shopping it, and he couldn't sell it. And so the day of closing, he actually went back to her and said, I'm not closing on this property unless you sell it to me for $230,000. He did a $60,000 price reduction. What sucked was she'd been in this house forever. The house was paid off. She needed the money from this house to close on her property that day on the next one. And she called me crying, wanted to see if I could come up with the funds of $250, wanted to go with me. We couldn't make that happen. She had to have the funds to close on her next property. So she ended up taking a $60,000 price reduction to sell that house and then buy the next one. And
that's a bummer.
Yeah. And that's not a unique story. I mean, that happens a lot where wholesalers, it's the whole, like, that they'll hook them with a high offer and then they'll try and retrade down to numbers that make sense. And it just takes advantage of people, and it hurts people, really great people. And I absolutely hate it. The one thing that the caveat to that, it's so manipulative, is if I don't think I can sell the property and I'm not going to close on it. Like, I was coming to your house and I thought 280 was a stretch, but you really wanted 280 for it. I thought maybe I have a buyer between 280 and 300. I'm not sure. I don't want it at 280 though. I would be very open and honest with you. And I'd say, hey, I don't want this house at 280. That seems high to me. But I have a really incredible network of other investors who could want it. And so let me send this to them and see if anybody's willing to buy this for over 280. And if not, I'm going to back out of the contract and be completely open and honest. And I try and usually do if I ever do that, which is very, very rare, I'll only do like a 5 to 7 day shopping period,
right?
That I'm open and honest about. And then
it keeps that person from making futuristic decisions that are going to put them in a hole based on this for sure thing.
Yeah. And then if I don't have a shopping, like I tell them every time they sign a contract is you can take this to the bank. You can start planning out your life based upon the money that's going to be coming to you from this contract, because I don't have contingencies in there and I'm going to close on it.
Nice.
And so, so it can just be it can be done the right way. And it can be done the wrong way, just like anything in life. Sure. I want to be around people that are doing it the right way. When I first started in real estate, I was working with a company that did it the right way. And so I'm super thankful for that and fortunate for that I was able to learn from people that did it the right way and
had
took
integrity.
care of people. Yeah, they had integrity in what they did. They didn't take advantage of people. One of their sayings was always, it's got to be a win for the seller. And I firmly believe that in everything that I do in real estate, that it has to be a win for the seller. And in this scenario, they don't care about the seller whatsoever. And so I also think that those are the people that are going to fizzle out when you're taking advantage of other people and other people's trust, like that you're going to fizzle out and you're not going to be successful. And so to build a successful real estate company, you have to put people first. You have to put people over profit.
Yeah. Love that, man.
So,
well, dude, that's our time is up. So this is great. I've learned a lot too.
It was a blast.
Yeah, it's fun. I like this. It
was so much fun.
We'll talk some granular stuff next few episodes, but if you guys like this, obviously we'd love just a quick rating on the podcast. Like, we're trying to provide you guys with valuable content. And if you could take 5 to 10 seconds out of your day, just throw a quick rating or a review, or even subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're watching this on YouTube, that'd be awesome. And we'll have some more fiery content getting thrown your way. See you on the next one.
See you guys later.